All right, we are moving on in Chapter 2 to the next section. The next section, 2.4, focuses on linear equations, more graphing, more writing equations, looking at some different forms than maybe what we did before your last quiz. So I wanted to start with just kind of reviewing some of the things that we did in the previous topics. So they're giving you the equation 4x minus 3y equals 12 and ask you to graph it. So at this point, to graph something like this, we want to get y by itself, so it's in slope-intercept form. So we're going to subtract 4x. So we have negative 3y equals negative 4x plus 12. And then finally, to get y by itself, we're going to divide by negative 3. When you have a negative divided by a negative, you're going to get a positive 4/3. That's going to end up being your slope. And then you have a positive 12 divided by negative 3, you get minus 4. That's going to be your y-intercept. So I'm going to jot that down. So my slope is 4/3, and my y-intercept is the point 0, negative 4. So when my graph align and I have the slope and the y-intercept, I always start at the y-intercept. So on the y-axis, I'm going to go down 4 spaces and I'm going to put a dot. Doesn't like to recognize my little dot there. And then my slope tells me I go up 4 units, right 3 units. So from that point on the y-axis, I'm going to go up 4. That's going to take me to the origin. And then I'm going to go right 3. And I end up with a point on the x-axis. And then when I connect the dots, I get the line that goes through both of those. It has a positive slope, which we expected, positive 4/3 slope. So the questions that here, just kind of wanting to talk you through some things you should recognize. When you're looking at a y-intercept, and this is an example of a y-intercept, what you'll notice about a y-intercept is the x is always 0 on a y-intercept. And then your x-intercept, so here on this graph, here's my x-intercept. It's at the point 3, 0. My x-intercept has the y value always equaling 0. So your x-intercept is always 0 and a number, and your y-intercept is always 0 and a number, and then your x-intercept is always a number and then 0. So we're going to start with our special types before we get into some of the more complicated forms. So we have 2 special types of lines, horizontal and vertical. Horizontal meaning running side to side, so this is an example of a horizontal line. The formula for a horizontal line will always be in the form y equals a number. So for example, if it was something like y equals 3, then you would go on your graph up 3 spaces on the y-axis, put a little point there if you'd like, and then you're going to draw a horizontal line at a height of 3. Vertical lines run up and down. Vertical lines are always in the form x equals anything. It could be like x equals negative 4. What that means is on your x-axis, you're going to go 4 spaces to the left over to negative 4, and then you're going to draw a vertical line, and those are all the places when the x value is negative 4. From a slope standpoint, horizontal lines have 0 slope. From a slope standpoint, vertical lines have undefined slope. So here's a couple questions that I saw in Delta Math that I figured I'd put up there. The ones at the bottom here of the screen. It says, what is an equation? Write an equation that goes through 3, negative 3 and has a slope of 0. So I know if it has a slope of 0, then it looks like these. It's in the form y equals. And you just have to look at your y value. So since the y coordinate is negative 3, that means the equation of this line is just going to be y equals negative 3. Because any line that has 0 slope will be horizontal, which is in y equals form. For the second one, it wants a slope that is undefined. So when we're talking undefined slope, that's going to be x equals, it's going to be vertical. You're going to go to your point and you're going to look at the x coordinate of your point. The x coordinate is 8. So the equation for an undefined slope line that goes through 8, negative 2 would be x equals 8. So those are our special types. They are the fastest ones to deal with because once you know they're horizontal and vertical, you know their equations are really short. We have some other forms. This first one called point slope should be one that you're familiar with from Algebra 1. The name point slope is named for what you need to have in order to use it. So when you're doing point slope, I'm just going to kind of highlight here. The slope that you're given is going to go where the m is. And then the point that you're given is going to go where the y1 and the x1, get that x1 back. Those are the things that you're going to be filling in when you use point slope. You're going to fill in the slope, the m value, it's going to go in front of the parentheses, and then you're going to fill in the point. And it can be any point. I'm just using very generically x sub 1, y sub 1 as the point on the line, and m as the slope. That is called point slope form, and it should be a form you're very, very comfortable with. I would jot down this formula in your notes anytime it says point slope form, making sure you realize what form it's referring to. The other form that we've already dealt with a ton, the one that you're probably the most comfortable with, is called slope-intercept form. You should be very comfortable with that form as well. So that when you're taking a test or you're doing something on Delta Math and it says put your answer in a particular form, you know which form they're referring to. So when you're writing an equation of a line, here's kind of like a little flow chart to help you. The first thing you want to ask yourself is, do I know the slope? Am I given the slope? Do I have a picture where I can find the slope? Do I have 2 points where I can find the slope? Remember your slope formula that you may use on and off is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So you may have to use that. You may have to use a picture and find slope. So if you have the slope or you can find it, great. Go on and move on. If you do not have the slope, then you need to find it. And it could be, again, using the formula. The next thing you want to ask yourself is, do I have the y-intercept? The y-intercept will always be written in the form 0, comma b, 0, comma a number. If I have the slope and I have the y-intercept, then the easiest thing to do is go straight to slope-intercept form. If I don't have the y-intercept, if I have another random point, instead of the point 0.5, I have the point 0.25, for example, then I want to use this one if I have any other point. I want to use point slope form. And then at the end, you want to make sure you put it in the right form. You will have questions that will ask you to leave it in point slope form, which means you're done a little sooner. And then you'll have other ones that will ask you to put it in y equals mx plus b form. So I want to take you through examples that are visual. I want to take you through examples that are more written in terms of words, so you're comfortable with anything that I ask. So let's start visual. If you're given a picture of a graph and you're asked to write the equation of the line, these you want to do everything by looking at the picture and finding the two things you need. The two things you need are you need the slope and you need the y-intercept. If you can find both of those things using the picture, which usually just involves counting, then you will be able to write your answer very quickly. I usually start with the y-intercept. So my y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So this is crossing the y-axis at -2, or you can write it as a point 0, -2. And then my slope, I'm going to move from that point to another point that's easy to find. So this one is very easy to identify and figure out, how did I get there? Did I go up or down? Did I go left or right? So to get from one point to the other, I go up 1 unit and then I go right 2 units. So that means my slope is +1 over +2. You can tell that the line has a positive slope just by looking at the shape that it's rising. So my equation would be y equals 1/2 x minus 2. Anytime you're working with visual ones, the easiest way to write the visual ones is to go straight to y equals mx plus b form. Let me show you one that came from Delta Math. I just cut and paste this picture because I wanted you to see what you're going to see on that program. So the directions were the same. It wants you to write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So here's my intercept. So my y-intercept crosses at -6. And then my slope. So I'm going to go from that point to that point. I definitely have a negative slope. You can see the lines going down. It looks like it goes down 2 units. So I'm going to put -2. And then it goes to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. So that is my slope. So the equation that they expect you to put in Delta Math is -2/5 x, because that's your slope in front of x, minus 6. So those are your visual ones. They should be very quick. You're identifying your two main features, which are your slope and your y-intercept. Then you're going to have the ones that ask you to write an equation, but instead of giving you a picture, they give you 2 points. If they give you 2 points, the first thing you need to do is find the slope of that line. So my slope, I'm going to do y minus y, so 8 minus 2 over 5 minus 3. 8 minus 2 is 6. 5 minus 3 is 2. Please get in the habit of reducing your slope if you can, so you end up getting a slope of 3. Then you want to see, do I have the y-intercept? If I do, that's great. It's going to save me time. If I don't, then I have to go to the point slope formula. I don't. Neither of these points are the y-intercept because neither of them have 0 as the first number. So I'm going to pick either point. It does not matter which one. I usually pick the one that has either smaller numbers or the first one. It does not matter. So I'm going to write my point slope formula. I'll put it back up to the top, is y minus y1 equals your slope x minus x1. So y minus my y value is 2. Equals, my slope was 3, it goes in front of the parentheses, and then x minus my x value was 3. Depending on how they ask you to finish your answer, if they say put it in point slope, you're done. If they want you to put it in slope-intercept form, you have some extra work to do. You need to distribute. So I'm going to distribute the 3. So 3x, 3 times -3 is -9. And then I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So my final answer is 3x minus 7. If they want it in slope-intercept form, that's what you have to do. If you look at the next one gives you 2 points again, so we have to find the slope. So I'm going to go do that first. So 1 minus 5, y minus y over 9 minus 1. I get negative 4 over 8, or in other words, negative 1/2. Notice in this one, the directions, this is from Delta Math, you probably recognize the font, wants you to write your answer in point slope form, which will actually be less work for you. You're going to pick either point. I'm just going to pick the first one, slightly smaller numbers, and I'm going to write y minus my y coordinate is 5, equal sign, negative 1/2 is my slope, then the parentheses, and then x minus 1. And since it wants the answer in point slope, you do not have to do any more work and do any more simplifying. The last thing that you could be asked to do is write an equation if you're given a point and the slope. This one's a little less work than the previous screen because you don't have to find the slope. It's already given. We know we're going to use that as my slope. This is not a y-intercept, so I need to use point slope. So y minus your y-coordinate is 2 equals your slope is 3/5, so that goes next, parentheses. Notice what happens with the x. You want to do x minus a minus 5. So notice that the x coordinate is negative. When you do minus a negative, it actually becomes addition. It becomes positive. So you can put the minus minus and then change it to a big plus if you'd like. If you notice it's going to be minus a negative, you can go straight to the plus sign. I'm going to show you how to get this one in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to distribute. So when I distribute, I get 3/5 x. 3/5 times 5 is 3. And then I'm going to get y by itself by adding 2 to both sides. So my final answer in slope-intercept form is y equals 3/5 x plus 5. So those are all the basic forms you should be comfortable with in today's lesson. When we get together next time, we'll look at a couple other forms and review what we did today.